There's a lot I want to get to with Billy Corben this week, later in this hour, because Memorial Day is here, and Memorial Day is a circus around here, and it's dangerous. We will have an attorney on who will tell you about all the unconstitutional things that happened during Memorial Day down here toward the end of this hour. And I want to cover some ground that runs from Coral Gables to Cutter with Billy Corben. But before I do that, Mike Ryan, this week was a big week for John Ruiz, billionaire booster for the University of Miami, who very much wants to publicly be seen as life wallet guy who runs the University of Miami. He came into $1 billion. The $1 billion is real. And John Ruiz, the University of Miami now has officially a booster backer who's willing to be out there with the public, as Lane Kiffin says, look, nothing I can do in recruiting, and no coach's name can compete with money. The money has arrived. The money is real for now. I have questions about the money, but for the moment, the money is real. I'm going to phrase it like that again and again because it seems ridiculous, all of it. Miami has been duped by scammers before, but officially, Miami's biggest booster is a billionaire.
Yes, you may remember in our listening audience, we referred to John Ruiz as a billionaire that's not a billionaire. Big-time dub for John Ruiz this week as his company, his SPAC, went public. He owned 65% of that company. He had 65% equity. It was weird how that story got aggregated. It was a very big week for John Ruiz headed into it because that chicken shit Nick Saban talked about him. So don't even get me started on Nick Saban.
I'd like to get you started there. What happened
bro,
there?
Like I haven't given you my thoughts on chicken shit Nick Saban. But what I would like to say about John Ruiz is he won. I know it kind of got aggregated and everyone's laughing at how much the stock price tumbled after it went public. The fact that it went public is the win. The fact that it tumbled is probably because he took a sizable withdrawal and officially became a billionaire. It's a very hard club to get into when you don't have generational wealth. It's the American dream. People can try to poke holes in it. For the moment, he's a big winner. Whether he's worth $21 billion or $8 billion, it's still billion with a B. There is no week in which you become a billionaire and you're handed an L. It's just not possible.
And we think, with some skepticism, and when I say we, I mean me and Billy, although I don't know that Billy wants to enter these waters right now because Billy is usually very reasonable and wants to wait things out, allow all the facts to come in. And the Ruiz thing smells like Miami. And when something smells like Miami, I am left to distrust anything that smells a little too much like Miami, and we drape in some of that good Cuban cologne. But, Billy, where are we on this? Do you want to enter this fray now, or you want to wait it out until a litigious John Ruiz decides that with his new billions, he doesn't want to be litigious with people like us at microphones?
I'd like to say something about the NIL mess. And that is that this is entirely of the NCAA's making. They had more, I was going to say years, they had decades to do the right thing, to create an equitable system. They were too fucking greedy and desperate to preserve this fiefdom and deprive athletes not just simply of fair compensation, but of their own ability to exploit their name, image, and likeness.
They rode it. They rode the stallion of injustice as long as they could, and now they've gotten
off a cliff.
Yes, they did.
Right off a cliff. And Nick Saban, he's the highest paid
state employee,
public official in the entire country. And for him to sit up there,
as it should be, college football is important.
For him to sit up there on a pile of his $9.75 million that he gets paid every year and wag his finger in the face of college athletes.
Mike Ryan, why are you showing restraint around Nick Saban? You actually know the inner workings of this stuff.
I'm letting Billy say his piece. I'm bummed because I'm late to this party. I was more so than Game 3 against the Boston Celtics. I was bummed that I missed the news cycle on chicken shit Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher's beef, which I loved, by the way, and I found hilariously hypocritical on both sides.
So great.
And I told Jess in particular, because Jess represented a whole bunch of people that pointed to Miami fans and supporters saying, you guys have a persecution complex, to which we always bark back, it's warranted.
We're persecuted.
Yes. When Miami gets into the game, the only way that they can, right? Because we can't operate the way that Alabama operated before. We can get in the game with NIL because the NCAA, to Billy's point, took a step back, and now all the toothpaste is out of the tube.
Stupid.
Yeah. When Miami gets into the game, when USC gets into the game, they run scared. They run scared, and for Nick Saban to air everybody else's dirty laundry except for his and beg openly to the NCAA to enforce the laws that protects his monopoly was chicken shit behavior. It was confirmed not just by Jimbo Fisher, but it was confirmed by even more chicken shit behavior from Nick Saban to walk it back as much as he possibly could the following day, to beg Jimbo Fisher with phone calls, presumably, to ask for forgiveness, knowing he messed up. Because everyone knows where your bodies are buried. And I did find it interesting, Nick, that you called out Miami basketball because you don't want any of that smoke.
Yeah. I mean,
if Nick Saban dare try to talk about the Miami Hurricanes singing like a canary, do not try.
You have threatened this several times.
Mutually assured destruction.
Don't talk about the baseball team.
You are smart to talk about basketball and make that distinction. And this goes for anybody in the state of Florida, in a major college program that is now our competition. You come for me, I'm coming for you. And I know shit.
Mike Ryan is threatening people. It is crazy to me that Mike Ryan is running around here telling Nick Saban, if you keep talking like this, I'm going to produce receipts. If Jimbo Fisher keeps talking like this, I'm going to produce receipts if anyone comes after the University of Miami first, because you're all doing it.
Dan, Billy, you know in big-time college football there was an honor amongst thieves. That was honored. You don't come out and say people are cheating. You can say, look into that. How's that happening? You don't come out and say exactly how you perceive people to be cheating. You don't do that. He broke rule number 1. And he's also he is the biggest offender. Alabama football has been running shit because they know they can get away with it. How dare you break the rule that you have benefited the most?
I want to get back to all the corruption in Miami. I want to get back to all the injustice in Miami. We can roam around talking about Nick Saban, but there is stuff in Because Miami that Billy Corben needs to get to that's more important than the injustices of college football. But I do love that Chris Cody just wandered past the room and whispered in my ear, how many consecutive times is Mike Ryan going to do the thing where he looks into a camera, points, and challenges
someone?
someone?
We're at 4 weeks in a row where he's gone on some rant where he's looking at the camera, pointing, and saying, not friends.
You're using that camera.
It's how you know I'm serious, because a lot of what I do on this show is bit. Is this amplified? Somewhat.
No, when you look into a camera.
Am I a child actor? Yeah. Am I a bit theatrical? You know it. But I am looking straight into your dead cold eyes, Nick Saban. You come for me, I'm coming for you with a fairly large platform. You do not want to make an enemy out of me.
It is. It's not the greatest of threats, the fairly large platform. It's okay. His threats fall apart all the time while staring into
Above
a camera.
average.
As if we're not in a janitor's clock. As if
My
we're not.
AC is presently broken.
Yes.
And I am sweating through this Kanye West R.I.P. DMX shirt as we speak.
We are in a janitor's closet at a Clevelander beach hotel that's falling apart as the city around us falls apart. But a sweaty Mike Ryan is looking into a camera and threatening Nick Saban.
But I am also very close to your power source.
With his fairly large platform.
Your empire was built on this swampland, Nick.
Yeah, it was.
Be very careful.
Billy, let's segue into some of the other subjects here, because there will be plenty of time in the future to talk to an unhinged John Ruiz and an unhinged Mike Ruiz.
Billy knows, too. We all know. We're going to make a documentary, Nick, if you come after
Oh,
it.
yeah, we are.
Mutually, it's what keeps the world turning, Nick.
Well,
mutually assured
We're going to make it with
destruction.
Corben. We're going to make Corben. We're going to make Cocaine Cowboys college football with Corben.
Where Saban is correct, though, is that the NIL situation is a mess. It is ad hoc because the states decided to take it upon themselves. The feds didn't do shit. But the NCAA, they're the ones who failed to come up with some sort of uniform policy that they could have done at any point along the way when they were getting the shit suit out of them over the video game. At any point along the way, they could have understood that they had to break some off for these student athletes on name, image, and likeness. And the fact that is anybody shocked that they built a big fucking loophole and Miami dove right into it? Like, that's what we do. Half our economy is this, and now he's upset about it. Where was Saban in his pearl clutching when his players were being deprived the ability to exploit their own rights and their own names?
Not surprising that one of the many things that we have seen in America when it comes to leadership is that it falls apart as soon as you get anywhere with the equality on threatening the power. It is a universal truth in college football and everywhere in America these days. So let's move on.
One last note on that, though, because John Ruiz, he doesn't make for a good face of this, and he has his own agenda, but he has helped the program in it very recently. And when he says we're doing NIL the right way, you can poke holes in that, certainly, but I know what those Miami players are doing with their NIL money. He is right. They are working. They are putting up videos. When Texas A&M gets the biggest recruiting class ever, and Jimbo Fisher has the nerve to say only one NIL deal there, and then how are you getting these players, Jimbo, if it isn't through NIL? Miami's at least using the only way that they know how to because it's the only way they're allowed to right now. And Nick Saban's trying to cut it off because he's scared.
Of course. It's such a great wild, wild west to see all of these dudes just exposed and cannibalizing each other. They couldn't wait 5 minutes as soon as they got here. It was a threat to the power. But let's talk about other ways where power is being abused and all the stuff in South Florida that we chronicle every week that hurts because the corruption is so rampant. Let's start, Billy, with Coral Gables. I'm just going to leave to you for the audience outside of Miami that doesn't know what Coral Gables is. It is a pristine time from another time in America, filled with much foliage in the center of Miami, protected money, a lot of protected money, a charming sanctuary away from what appears to be the rest of Miami.
It is the home to the University of Miami, in fact, which is not located in Miami, but located in Coral Gables, one of the 34 municipalities of Dade County. And happy Founders Day. The City of Coral Gables Commission passed a resolution some weeks ago recognizing June 3rd as Founders Day in Coral Gables to celebrate George Merrick, a man they claim, quote, supported civil society and places of worship, unquote.
I believe I went to journalism school at the Merrick building. What are you going to tell me about Merrick that I'm not going to like?
George Merrick is the proud public engineer of segregation in Miami. He is Miami's segregator-in-chief. He repeatedly said that he wanted to depopulate Dade County of black people, or at the very least, corral all black people into Overtown and Brownsville, intentionally create ghettos. Except, of course, the fact that he needed black people to build his white oasis in Dade County for the labor to actually build the damn city, and then they had to get the fuck out. And the city, of course, now wants to erase this crucial part of their history that the city would not have been built without. graduate students conducted an independent study of the university's historical figures with a specific focus on George Merrick, the building that you were educated in.
Mike, again, I will say this to the audience. I believe I have this right. I never checked the history of the building, but the Merrick building was my communication school at the University of Miami.
This study was to determine the roles of Merrick and other historical figures at the university with names on the university, around the university, to determine the roles in the creation and perpetuation of discriminatory policies. Among their findings was the fact that Merrick, as the head of the Miami-Dade Planning Board in the 1930s, advocated for all black families to be pushed out of Miami city limits into, quote, we'll see, N-word that ends in O, towns. And
I don't believe that that's a slur, actually. I believe you're allowed
I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
And it was called the N-word that ends in O resettlement plan. That's what Merrick's plan was called. In a speech to the Miami Realty Board in May of 1937, Merrick proposed a, quote, complete slum clearance, effectively resuming every N word that ends in O from from the city. And this black removal, Merrick asserted, was most essential and fundamental for the achievement of Miami's ambitious planning goals. And Merrick, like most racists of the era, was absolutely successful, and it led to the development, in fact, of Liberty Square, Miami's famous pork and beans projects. A petition to remove Merrick's name from your building at UM and on all other UM structures has about 7,000 signatures. Some people want to even remove his statue from City Hall in Coral Gables, like the statues of Confederate generals. And so you have to wonder, why be proud of this racist, like the Confederate statues? Why celebrate losers? And I think it's because it turns the racist losers who run these cities into winners by default. Like a lot of Miami-Dade municipalities, Coral Gables is a real estate racket disguised as a government. Mayor Vince Lago and Commissioner Kirk Menendez are real estate brokers. Commissioner George Force is a real estate attorney. Commissioner Michael Mena works for people actively buying and developing property in the city and the county at large. They just voted to bulldoze an entire city block of 52 affordable apartments that will displace dozens of working families, including children and elderly people, to build luxury condos amidst a housing crisis. City of Coral Gables.
Housing crisis, but also housing boom, right? Coral Gables is a place for wealthy people. Coral Gables, for the audience who does not know, is very strictly government run. It is hard to get things done in Coral Gables, and you're saying the government just said, hey, land is at a premium. Let's go get some more of it here in a way that's unreasonable and unfair.
It's run by anti-Semites, racists, red baiters, masturbators, and demagogues, okay? That's what Coral Gables is. This is the first of two times I'll say this phrase in this show. They are a Jim Crow commission in Coral Gables. Do you know the reason why Coral Gables street signs are on rocks on the ground, basically stones on the ground with no reflection ability?
For those who do not know the history of Coral Gables or the things in Coral Gables that Billy knows a lot about that are historic, in Coral Gables, one of the many charming quaintnesses is that the corner streets have nice names, and those nice names are very low to the ground on the floor on white rocks.
Named for cities in Spain, predominantly, and you can't see them when you're driving the neighborhood, and the reason is outsiders ain't welcome. They don't want you to know your way around. They don't want you to be able to find your way around. They don't want you to be able to navigate through the city. They want you to get lost, literally and figuratively. Get lost and get the hell out of Coral Gables. And you have in Coral Gables, in Vince Lago, and in the city voted against renaming West Dixie Highway Harriet Tubman Highway. And we couldn't, in fact, rename it because they were the lone holdout against it. Vince Lago is one of the parents that signed a racist letter a couple years ago at his daughter's private school, perpetuating an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that ties Jews into Marxism. And the letter claimed that diversity and teaching children diversity was anti-Catholic indoctrination. This is just a despicable town run by despicable people who like the city of Miami Beach and their Jim Crow.
A lovely town otherwise.
One of the richest municipalities in Miami.
A lovely place to be otherwise, but very well protected by infrastructure that is rotten at its core.
If you'll remember in the first ESPN 30 for 30, the U that we made, right out of the gate, the first thing that all the players said was, we felt like fishes out of water in Coral Gables. It was not a welcoming environment for people of color and for specifically for the football players who could really not drive through the neighborhood at night without getting pulled over. And that was in the 80s, 70s and 80s, and now it's still the same today.
But Coral Gables loved those football teams, though. Loved the way those football teams represented Coral Gables, even as those football teams sometimes spilled over the lines and represented Coral Gables in a way that was the opposite of the core around the city. It's crazy to think about, Billy. Like, I want to talk to you about other things, but that the university, that team existed at the center of that city was not something that you covered in documentary form in a way that would make us understand that team was super black in a city that doesn't want any kind of black. Not super black, any kind of black.
I think the confusion is, and I don't know that we did it justice, but I'm glad that we were able to get it in there at a time in which ESPN perhaps wasn't necessarily dealing with those issues on camera
at all.
And so, but I think the confusion comes in even for people who live here in Miami, that Miami is just kind of everything south of I-4 or something like that. It's kind of a blanket name for all of South Florida, when in fact, even in Miami-Dade County alone, you have all these little fiefdoms. You had this self-segregation that was created by incorporating, and quite literal segregation that was created by incorporating these racist little enclaves like Coral Gables.
One of the things I love about doing this with you is that you're informing a lot of people, even who think they know Miami, about a lot of historical things that they do not know about Miami. But I don't want this segment to be something that only talks about Miami. And there are plenty of angles here to talk about things that are here, but there are a couple of national stories that I want, and international stories that I wanted to get on the docket with you as well. Qatar, I never know whether to pronounce it Qatar or Qatar. Both are allowed. Obviously not a local story, but how is it that you can tie some of the things going on in Qatar, which is a place, how would I explain this to the audience, that has used sports washing and money in general to arrive in a place where they have a status as a country because of money that obscures a lot of bad behavior?
It became a hyper-local story, Qatar did. It is a country in the Persian Gulf with a deplorable human rights record. The LGBTQ plus community has less than no rights. It is in fact illegal, punishable by up to 7 years in prison. On the books is still the maximum punishment is death by stoning for engaging in, quote, deviant sexual behavior, end quote, inconsistent with Muslim beliefs. I don't know that anybody has been stoned to death, but it is on the books. They have anti-Semitic propaganda in their textbooks. The treatment of women in that country is atrocious. Women who are raped and the victims of sexual abuse can and are prosecuted for having sex outside of marriage. Years in prison, up to 100 lashes. You have what they call the modern-day slave trade, indentured servitude, forced labor, that has in fact built the World Cup 2022 stadiums.
Hundreds of people have died building. I don't know if it's thousands, but it's I don't know if it's yet 1,000. And I feel remorse in not knowing whether it's hundreds or thousands, because it might be thousands. Bodies have been thrown at making sure that Qatar has an Olympic monument no matter how many people it kills, and those people tend to be the disenfranchised or the vulnerable.
They have South Asian immigrants who come in from Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and they are forced into labor. Some of them are living in makeshift barracks on the site of some of the stadiums that they died building because the working conditions are so atrocious, because nobody cares. They just care about building soccer stadiums. They don't care about people dying for no reason to build soccer stadiums. About over 6,000 forced laborers have died since the World Cup announced that Qatar was going to host the 2022 event. Not all of them obviously worked on the stadiums, but there are at least 40 or so reported, and people estimate more likely hundreds of people have died in pursuit of these soccer stadiums. Now, here's the thing. All of a sudden this week, a delegation of City of Miami and Miami-Dade County politicians went to Qatar on some sort of mission, economic mission, that was paid for by Qatar. That includes Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava. That includes City of Miami Commissioners Alex Diaz-Laportilla, Christine King. That includes Miami-Dade County Commissioner and Vice Chair of the Commission, Oliver Gilbert. This country with this absolutely atrocious human rights record.
One would imagine a very lavish trip, right? Because this is how Qatar does it. They they legitimize themselves by just making it rain money.
Yeah. And as it turns out, If you want to know what's wrong with the Democrats in the state of Florida, and particularly Miami-Dade County, it is this bottom-feeding class of consultant cowboys, one of the most powerful of which is Christian Olvert, who works for Miami-Dade County Mayor Danielle Levine Cava, as well as several other Florida state senators, commissioners, Senator Jason Pizzo, Senator Lauren Book, Senator Janet Cruz, Janelle Perez, who is running for Senate, Miami-Dade County Commissioner Eileen Higgins, Miami-Dade County School Member Luisa Santos. It turns out this guy is a registered foreign agent being paid by Qatar to promote Qatar to Miami-Dade County Mayor Danielle Levine Cava, who also pays him as her campaign consultant, manager, and a very close advisor. They are constantly in contact about the running of Miami-Dade County government. This is a guy who's not even that good at his job, if you know anything about the Democrats' performance in the state of Florida, number one. Number two, he has been a constant source of controversy, conflict of interest, and embarrassment for the party. And yet, here he is now, literally in bed and on the payroll of this country with atrocious human rights record. And now you have these politicians who are taking money from this regime to go over and talk about maybe some train infrastructure with them, visiting. I mean, Danielle Levine Cava posted a video with her and Oliver Gilbert proudly in one of these stadiums built by slave labor. Okay, this was Miami-Dade County's first female mayor, supposed to be a progressive, and she has been, I regret to say it, a wolf in sheep's clothing.
What's happening there? Is
money, baby, money.
But is it money and also a blind spot to optics, or is it that the optics don't end up mattering because a lot of people are in business for dirty money, and maybe arguments can be made by business people on whether it's iPhones or anywhere else. Look, we're all compromised around commercialism. We're all compromised around capitalism. So I'll take my money where I can get it. I don't care about the optics, and I don't care how you're doing the definitions of how I should be a progressive politician.
There's definitely a blind spot with this consultant class where they should flush the toilet on these characters like Christian Olvert. But yet they kind of feel like they're forced. Many candidates young candidates are forced to hire or compelled by other people in the party to hire this guy who's done incredible damage to the party, as evidenced by their failure over the last 20 plus years, the Democrats. But you also have just classic hypocrisy. Alex Diaz-Laportilla is a classic red-baiting demagogue, right? Everything's comunista, okay? This is a guy who rightfully has railed for decades in public office against the tyrannical communist regime in Cuba. But now he's in Qatar? Now Qatar is okay? I mean, come on. But Danielle Levine Cava is the most disappointing here. I went to see last weekend.
You endorsed her. You keep saying that, and I keep holding you to it because of how. I don't know how you got fooled by that. I didn't
get fooled by that. It's our responsibility in a democracy to choose the best candidate that's running in a race. She is still, today, the best candidate that was running in that race, which is why I try to recruit better candidates now, by the way, into a race. But you vote for the best candidate in the race, and then whoever wins, whether I supported them or not, I have to hold them accountable. I can't believe I'm going to quote a Liz Cheney speech from earlier this week, but she said, quote, "In a republic, there are no bystanders. There are no spectators. As citizens, every one of us has a duty to set aside partisan battles and stand together to perpetuate and preserve our great republic." I'm not in a cult. This is a democracy. This is a constitutional republic. I feel more of a responsibility to hold Danielle Levine Cava accountable because I encourage people to vote for her, because I endorsed her. And I will say this, there is a wonderful play, a hilarious romantic comedy called The Cuban Vote that is now playing
it's locally. You've been encouraging me to see it, Roy. I'm assuming that we've invited her on the program as well, and she has declined. We have gotten very few politicians where Billy can hold them accountable here on the program.
Everybody's declined, Dan. You know that.
All right. I just wanted to make sure we were still asking.
I love that Roy is a man of few words, but whenever he speaks, it's just perfect. It's just perfect. I just sharpened daggers. He
Well,
just sits there sharpening daggers, and then
he's
just
being
throws
matter of fact. He's been calling, and they keep either saying no or not returning the phone calls.
Yeah.
Regardless, continue your point.
And I think Roy called everybody in the city of Miami Beach government this week to get them as a guest on the show as well, and failed.
Yeah, you're trying to get me arrested for harassment.
As if it's not going to be hard enough already being around here this weekend as a black man. I want to get to the Memorial Day stuff. I want to get. I'm worried about what's approaching this weekend. But finish your point here.
Roy's going to sneak into your checked baggage, I think, this weekend.
He's going to leave with me.
Yeah, I saw your bag earlier. It fits.
I'm going to get out of here. We'll talk about that in about 10 minutes with our next guest, because Memorial Day weekend is not something we will leave here today without exploring. In the middle of a city where there's a lot, there have been a couple now of curfews and states of emergency that have been declared on Miami Beach. I'm very worried about what's approaching this weekend.
I do want to say about this play, The Cuban Vote, now playing at the Colony Theater, Miami New Drama, brilliant play, very incisive, funny, by Carmen Pelaez, a wonderful local playwright and actress who stars in the piece. I saw it last weekend with Daniela Levine Cava, Miami-Dade County's first female mayor, in the audience. She loved it. She endorsed the play, went on camera to sing its praises, as I am here now. The play is about mediocre and corrupt men who are trying to bring down a great woman who is running to become the first female mayor of Miami-Dade County. And I will tell you, I don't think Danielle Levine Cava understood it. I don't think she got the point. I don't think she got the message.
So she endorsed it, and you didn't realize that it's a bit of it's her story, that she's endorsing a comedy without realizing it's a comedy?
No, without realizing that it's biographical, without realizing that it's about her, without realizing that who we thought would be our most progressive mayor, who we enthusiastically elected our first female mayor, who we thought was going to move Miami-Dade County forward, not only is likely going to wind up being a one-term mayor, but is going to set back progressive politics in Miami-Dade County by decades. And she's doing it out of loyalty, fealty, out of a blind spot, out of making a grave mistake of relying upon mediocre and corrupt men.
Before, again, we get to, and I don't mean to make this depressing, but I am depressed about the fact that I love this place and I have to leave it this weekend. And it's not because I'm a coward. It's just heartbreaking to me that I have to leave. And
you're smart.
Yeah, and it's just really inconvenient. And what they've done to South Beach during Memorial Day, and I don't mean black people, I mean people trying to run off black people, makes me deeply sad, as does yet another slaughtering of children in schools. I don't know how you experienced this week, but I assume you experienced this week with the same righteous rage, trembling anger, and enormous heartbreaking sadness that we're not united on much in these states, but I do believe that we all draw the line at the slaughtering of children in schools. We can agree on that being heartbreaking. So everything that happened after that, you did what with?
I don't know that we agree on that. I think you and I agree on that. I don't know that we as a nation actually agree that the slaughter of elementary school children is something that is tragic. And it might be too soon to politicize this. So let's just pretend I'm talking about Sandy Hook instead, because it's probably not too soon to politicize that, I don't think. So the fact that this is happening again, and it keeps happening, and this is the only country in the world where this keeps happening. And last week we had to have a conversation about more than 50% of this country losing body autonomy and the rights to make healthcare decisions for themselves and their family because the government wants to be in the room making that decision for them and telling what they can and cannot do under the guise of protecting unborn children. But we have a party in this country who only pretends to care about babies up until the moment they're born and able to actually live successfully outside of their mother's womb, and then they don't give a shit. They don't care about paid parental leave. They don't care about health care. I don't even think that they care about health care for women while they're pregnant. They don't care about protecting children. They don't care about public schools. And in fact, it's worse than not caring. They proactively attempt to thwart every effort that anyone else and any other politicians attempt to better regulate this militia, to say that under the Second Amendment, you can't just buy whatever weapons you want or whatever guns you want. There are limitations to reasonable limitations to even our constitutional rights. And there is an evolution of this country and the threats against us that require us to reinterpret, perhaps, under the new reality, what these amendments mean. Not eliminating them, but what they mean and what their limitations are. And the perversion of these amendments to justify mass murder of children and mass murder of people whose nation of origin you don't like, or the color of their skin you don't like, and an 18-year-old who cannot buy beer in Texas can walk in and buy 2 fucking rifles and take them to an elementary school and murder teachers and murder children and half of this country and half of the leadership of this country react with a shrug. I will tell you unequivocally that the thoughts and the prayers are not working. The thoughts and the prayers are not working. Your God is not listening. We need to do something because there's no reason for this. Every single lost life was avoidable. Every single parent and family members and the children who survived but witnessed the mutilated corpses of their classmates who were single digits, riddled with semi-automatic gunfire on the floor of their fucking elementary school, who will be forever traumatized and transformed by this. And what we hear is, now is not the time. Now is not the time to talk about the law. Now is not the time to talk about the fundamental flaws in our system that permit this to occur and perpetuate this. And the pearl clutching, when we have to live through day after day of hate speech, of vilification of others, vilification of people who don't look like us or weren't born in this country, the vilification of reasonable efforts to control the flow of weapons of mass destruction. Even when most Americans actually agree that reasonable measures need to be taken. You have a leadership class that has been bought and paid for, manipulated, who actually sat with Jeb Bush and leaders of the Republican Party decades ago and wrote law. NRA lobbyists writing actual laws. Sitting down, pen to paper, fingers to keyboard, writing laws that allow for the proliferation of this kind of violence. And now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, in a race to the bottom with the bloodthirsty ghoul governor of Texas, wants to have a special legislative session again, not to deal with the housing crisis, not to deal with any of our problems.
This is so appalling. This part of it, the fact that we can get legislation done quickly on critical race theory, but not to prevent the slaughter of children like that, it's just you can't be more appalled than that.
And now he wants a special legislative session, and is promised if it doesn't happen now, that in the latest special legislative session, it will most certainly happen before his governorship is over, that we will have so-called constitutional carry in this state. Again, another fabulous way that the Republicans brand death and hate and destruction. How can you hate it? It's constitutional. Don't you love the Constitution, you comunista? What it is anyone can carry a gun anywhere, anytime. You don't need training. You don't need a permit. You can just, first of all, I don't know how that would really change Miami very much, but
Well, that's the segue to what we're doing next. Billy, thank you. I'm sorry that all of this is so upsetting. It's going to get more upsetting here in the next 10 minutes as we talk to somebody who is an expert about just how many civil liberties are about to be violated in Miami during Memorial Day weekend. That is next. We've been talking today about what approaches because Memorial Day weekend, I don't know whether you consider Friday morning the weekend. We were arguing about that this week, but Memorial Day weekend has arrived in Miami. It is a famous weekend. I'm going to say it has gotten a lot worse over the years. And when I say that, as we actively try to blight a situation and the police presence is so overwhelming during Memorial Day weekend. You have a whole lot of black people partying, and last year I think it was also air and sea shows, so it's not just police officers armed everywhere. We also had military. I don't know if that was a year or 2 years ago, and I've always been disgusted that the businesses here, some of them closed down, and there's a lot of white flight, and some businesses who don't like that people just come in and out and eat without tipping or whatever, behave in behavior that is racist, but also...
Tips are included in South Beach. The gratuities are usually automatically on the bill.
I'm just telling you why the businesses hide under some of the racism of black people don't tip or they come in here and run in and out and eat the food. So they just close down. Yeah. And
you sound like a city commissioner, Dan.
And they leave. And the reason I bring it all up is because this is the first year that ever I am taking part in the flight because I don't feel like America is safe enough. Never mind this weekend, but America is safe enough to...
You're leaving?
I am leaving. I have to get out of here. My neighborhood already is not safe.
I think Ocean Drive is safer than an elementary school in this country. So there's that at least. And there will be a military-like police presence. You'll be happy to know the Air and Sea Show is returning this year. And there's all kinds of counter-programming. The new Deco Orchestra, a fabulous orchestra, is playing on the beach. They're having kids zones.
My flight is not because the black people are arriving. My flight is because I don't know what's going to happen with the amount of shootings and police presence and guns. And I'm not. It's not the black people I don't trust. It's the authorities I don't trust. It is a gunman in a school or a church who might see black people in a certain place and decide that's the day he wants to start shooting around. And I bring all this up only to bring in our next guest and to explain to the audience why Daniel is with us, Billy. I'll allow you to do that. He's a Florida Association of Defense lawyer, and his name is Daniel Tibbitt. And last year that we had?
Summer.
Tell the people about the details of his case.
Well, first I want to mention that there were years of Memorial Day weekend in which we were militarizing the beach, shutting down the causeways, scanning all the license plates, shutting down the roadways, creating a massive inconvenience for the residents. That's actually the thing, is that it's a massive inconvenience for the residents to get out. You're prisoners in your home.
That too. Can't go anywhere. If I want to go anywhere during Memorial Day weekend, the police presence is so strong that I've got to get. It's going to take me 3 hours to get anywhere that's not on bike.
And despite all that, there were years that went by where the only guns that were fired and the only people that were killed were by Miami Beach police officers, Miami-Dade police officers, Hialeah police officers, because they quintuple their coverage, if you will, by bringing in outside police departments here. And to that end, last summer, Miami Beach Commissioner and racist old coot Stephen Minor introduced an ordinance that was passed unanimously by the commission, what I lovingly call the Jim Crow Commission in the city of Miami Beach, that would unconstitutionally, many experts argue, make it illegal to record the police. Now, that's not exactly what the law says. The law says it's about interference with police. It's about maintaining a certain distance while police are fulfilling their duties or making an arrest. Here's the problem. The moment this ordinance went into effect, the police, in a matter of days, weeks, arrested 13 people under this ordinance, all of them black, and most of them simply for the constitutionally protected act of recording the police in a public space. A lot of it, as a result of that, was caught on video. It outraged the entire country, was incredibly negative press for the city of Miami Beach, but just the kind of negative press they like because it sends a message to people of color that you are not welcome here in the city. Daniel has been on the front lines of this battle against this unconstitutional ordinance. And first and foremost, Daniel, I've called it unconstitutional now several times. Why is it unconstitutional?
Well, thank you guys for having me on. Well, look, the ordinance, as you said, it doesn't specifically talk about filming the police. What it says is if the police say so, they can enact a 20-foot perimeter where, citizens are not to be in a public place, on the streets of Miami Beach. And if, they say, hey, this is the 20-foot circle and you don't leave it, they can arrest you. That is unconstitutional. That harkens back to what what happened in this country under in the South when legal segregation was being challenged in the 60s, right? When Black people would have sit-ins in lunch counters or libraries or whatever that were supposed to be segregated according to the local law. And the police, the Supreme Court said that municipalities are not allowed to do that. Municipality cannot just enact a space where citizens are not allowed to be. So, that's one reason. The ordinance prohibits interrupting police officers. That's language in the ordinance. That has been specifically found, but that exact language, interrupt police officers, has been found by the Supreme Court to be unconstitutional. Americans have, whether everybody agrees with it or likes it, or certainly whether police officers agree with it or like it, if you're not physically interfering with a officer, you have the right to voice your opinion. You have the right to tell the officer, I don't like how you're treating these people. I don't like how you're doing your job. That's part of being a public servant is that you're going to hear feedback from the public that you serve.
And protected speech under the First Amendment at that. Last July at the Royal Palm Hotel, this is one of the cases that caught national attention. There was two Black men who were arrested under this ordinance as they recorded police officers at the hotel. One of them, as I recall, was told to back up on camera and was following orders on the part of the officer. And then 5 Miami Beach police officers pounced on him, beat him, and falsely arrested him. And to their credit, the state attorney's office, the 5 officers were arrested and charged with misdemeanor battery for the excessive force. And the state attorney, as they continue to do, drops the cases against the people who are unconstitutionally arrested under this unconstitutional ordinance. So my question is, why is this ordinance still on the books? I've been calling the city, we've been calling the city manager's office, the city attorney's office, the police department, multiple city commissioners, the mayor, Dan Gelber. No one wants to come on this program to justify and defend this law. But it seems like a little bit of legal manipulation that's going on here, because some of these cases they let linger for months. They claim they're going to defend this ordinance and that it'll hold up to constitutional scrutiny, and then they seem to just ghost. Right? What's happening with this? What is this tactic at work here on the part of the city attorney?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think it is worth pointing out that there is and maybe this is of local interest only, but there is a distinction between the state attorney's office and, the city attorney of Miami Beach. And there's been, as you pointed out, Billy, the state attorney's office, did actually prosecute the cops in the incident that is prosecuting them in the incident you're talking about, Miami Beach Police. The state attorney's office has not wanted, as far as I've seen, anything to do with this ordinance, has not attempted to defend it. As you know, the city of Miami Beach has taken the position, I think, for, their politicians have taken the position for, electoral reasons that, the problem on Miami Beach is that the state attorney's office isn't being tough enough on our criminals.
Right.
And, that we can't do anything about it. So now they're trying to, beef up their local prosecutors, the city attorneys, to deal with this. So, as far as the cases that occurred where people got arrested for this ordinance, that, we were involved with, and I was involved through a group, Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, Miami, which I'm on the board of, that, tries to protect people's constitutional rights, people that either could become criminal defendants. We became aware that people were being arrested for this. It seemed pretty clearly unconstitutional. We started filing motions to dismiss in every case that we became aware of. The the ones that were being prosecuted by the state attorney's office, they dropped immediately. The ones that were being prosecuted by the city attorney's office, they claimed, as you said, that they were going to defend the constitutionality of this ordinance. The most recent case, and most of these arrests, I think they enacted this after last Memorial Day weekend. Most of these arrests that actually happened on Rolling Loud weekend. As you guys know, Rolling Loud is a rap music festival that attracts a lot of young Black people, the people that Miami Beach clearly thinks are undesirable tourists to the city. That's when these arrests happened. That was a weekend in July. The most recent of these cases actually just got dismissed in May or April, maybe. No, I think it was last week. And the city attorney's office had said 2 months before that, we're coming in, we're fighting this motion to dismiss. We believe this ordinance is constitutional, and we're gonna, fight it in court. We're gonna prove this. Came to the day that the judge had set the hearing, which was on an afternoon at 2:00. I show up. The judge is ready to hear the motion. She's read everything. There's, as I said, there's a lot of Supreme Court case law. There's a lot of precedent on our side, and the city attorneys show up at the courthouse across the causeway and dismiss the case. They do not want to, in my opinion, they do not want to defend this ordinance in court because they know that they will lose, because it is clearly unconstitutional. And if they try to defend it in court and lose, the ordinance gets stricken as unconstitutional. If they just arrest people and then just dismiss all the cases,
right.
After people have spent a night in jail, after people have suffered the
you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. So they get to continue to utilize this unconstitutional stick, if you will, on the public. Arrest people for no good reason, abuse people for no good reason.
Basically, what you're saying here is the law, as they've made it, is we can arrest you because you can't stand there because we say so.
Yes, and then they'll drop the case months later.
But not before you've gone through having your weekend ruined.
And they will not defend the ordinance because if it's declared unconstitutional, then they have to stop utilizing it.
You can keep doing this as long as you just bury it in paperwork.
If you understand the level of abuse that we're talking about here is extraordinary, and the city attorney is not does not represent the best interests of the people of Miami Beach.
How does it change, though?
What it does is they are mob lawyers who represent the unconstitutional, unethical, corrupt, and illegal behavior of the city government. And it's an embarrassment. And I know what's going to happen when these 5 police officers come up on these misdemeanor battery charges. What the defense is going to be, well, they relied on this ordinance that is very much on the books, this ordinance that is yet to be declared unconstitutional. They were only doing their jobs. Perhaps they weren't properly trained on this ordinance because it was a new law, and they're going to get off.
They're gaming the system to be what would be, if America were what we thought it were, in a utopian place, they're gaming the system by fracturing the Constitution and burying it in paperwork.
And to justify tyrannical and authoritarian behavior on the part of the state.
Over black people.
Well, it's only been enforced against black people to date, this ordinance.
Anything else we should know here, Daniel? Because I am headed into a weekend that is just wildly, wildly heartbreaking to me as someone who loves this area and sees all the ways that Miami isn't like the rest of America, because we do have melting pot capabilities, but I also have seen the deterioration of law enforcement and the relationship between law enforcement and black people during this particular weekend that makes it so deeply unpleasant and hostile and dangerous to be around here because of everything, all the ingredients that have been thrown into the cauldron, that it breaks my heart to have to leave the city and the area where I live and love because this weekend feels unsafe and kind of un-American.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's accurate. As far as this ordinance, we, FACDL Miami, myself, will continue to be alert to unconstitutional arrests of American citizens on Miami Beach. But, as of now, it's still on the books and they won't defend it.
And unfortunately, Daniel, I think you're going to get a lot of new clients this holiday weekend.
Inevitably. Daniel, thank you for being on with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me.